he'll pass them forward. So we're just going to go down the row here. And if someone that's written this question doesn't find that their question's been answered, you have a follow-up on the answer or response, then please speak up. And others who want to say something on our panel here can say something. We're going to go until 1 o'clock. When the bell rings, party's over. Okay. Are there any efforts to define or permeate our ISKCON vision, mission, values, and principles internally and then externally? Are there any efforts to define? I think it means propagate. Right? Within our society and externally. Our mission, vision, values, principles. Well, everything's there in Prabhupada's books. And if people read Prabhupada's books, they'll receive that. Just as we've done here, another, for example, is the purposes of ISKCON. We're going to be detailing the same at 26-second Evan. I'm sure all over the world, different efforts are being made to let people internally and externally know what are the purposes of ISKCON. In part, that's our mission. And the whole of, as far as my perspective on what ISKCON 50 is exactly this. That there's again, the internal celebration, but there's also the external communication of, I like to use the language, ISKCON's gifts to the world, which, means Prabhupada's gifts to the world, but ISKCON's gifts to the world, and we're a giving organization, and we're giving gifts. And what are those gifts? And our vision for how to provide those gifts. It's like, it's in Prabhupada's books, for example, establishing centers is for the purpose of fostering loving exchanges of 6 different kinds and details. So it's in Prabhupada's books. Vision, mission, goals. And detailing some of those through functions just like what we're doing. And ISKCON 50, an element of that is supposed to be, at least for those centers that are doing it, is communicating to media. Just like downstairs, there's that ISKCON 50 magazine, and thousands of those, tens of thousands of those are being made available to the public. It's for the public, and it's responsive as an instrument for that. The video is an instrument for that. There's another video being prepared. So then it's up to us to make it available. And I can share with you that traveling and showing it to our temple congregations, many temple congregation members have never seen that video. So if you've seen the video, make it available to others, because it's for the public. It's, celebration inside, but communication outside. What is ISKCON? What's our mission? What's our vision? What's our contributions? The tools are there. We just, pick them up and use them according to your ability. It's related. Second, are there any efforts to signify importance of context and intent of Srila Prabhupada for future generations and going into the future? So, yes, and it's just now beginning with the understanding, as I mentioned, it started about a year ago, and then it's been through iterations and, refinements, and now it's becoming a little bit more of an internal document that then needs a committee to work on exactly these things, documenting we're using this language, GBC is using the language foundational document. And the implication of a foundational document is meant not for time and circumstance, it's meant to go beyond time, over generations. So documenting in a foundational document some of these things. So in the future, the innovation and the circumstances in the world that innovation is required, it must correspond with some of these foundational ideas. So there's work, and it takes years of multiple people who are deep thinkers and editors and refiners and feedbackers and rewriting, and to get something that's going to stand the test of time. You're next. Portable?
The question, there's two questions here, one following the other. Are problems, at some sense, illusions, as souls are eternally blissful and knowledgeable? If yes, why are we spending so much time addressing and solving problems? Yes, problems are illusions. All of our problems are illusions, every single one of them, because we are eternal, full of knowledge, and full of bliss. The Irish poet Yeats wrote, describing the human soul, sick with desire and fastened to a dying animal, it knows not what it is. So we don't know who we are.
Wow.
Good piece of poetry.
Yeah.
Those. I mean, this is general spiritual knowledge. It's not just in the Bhagavad Gita. Many people know this. So in a sense, it's this illusory superimposition. I'm eternal. My body is temporary. I identify myself with my body. Then I think, now I'm going to die. Now I'm growing old. Now I'm diseased. Now none of these things are happening to me, but I experience them as happening to myself. So if the problems are illusion, we'd still have the problem of having illusions. So we need to dispel the illusion. So do it. Well, wait a minute, I got a few problems here, So that's why we are spending time addressing and solving the problems, because they're not easy to solve. And even if as a member of ISKCON, as a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, even if my illusion is gone, I have to worry about other people's illusions. That's my obligation. And in our movement, we have people with various degrees of illusions. And sometimes illusions increase and decrease in the same person, depending on the astrology or the whatever. So this is one reason we are concerned about it, is we are making spiritual progress by practicing the Yuga Dharma. The Yuga Dharma is Sankirtan, that we serve Krishna in the association of devotees. So just because of that, other people's problems are my problems, and my problems are other people's problems. That's the nature of a society, but our practice is Sankirtan, which really means that if we want to go back to Godhead, basically we go back all together. It has to be a group effort. And so as to make plans to not just save ourselves, but to save other people, That requires a great deal of work. Srila Prabhupada, for example, could have not worried about anybody. He was in Vrindavan. He was a completely liberated soul. He was enjoying his relationship with Krishna. And then why does he pack up his bags and get aboard this little steamer and come to America and make so many problems his problems? Because he was caring for other people. So it's our duty, and it's our caring for Krishna, because we know that Krishna wants everyone back. We want to satisfy him. And we're caring for other people, that we take on and deal with these problems so that these illusions can be dispelled and everybody can experience, that we can experience ourselves as we are, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
These are my mentors that I sit beside. So we'll see if I learned anything. So I'm going to put two questions together. They're related and they're right close together also. It says, how to see family responsibilities as service to Krishna. And the other question, how does Grihastha Ashram with so many responsibilities help in getting closer to Krishna? So the pastimes of Krishna are within the framework of family life. Correct? Did I got that one right? It's in the framework of family life. So it must be something to learn from studying the pastimes of Krishna, and possibly have to do with family life. So in family life, you have a lot of unique responsibilities. It's a training ground to prepare you to work in larger groups. So you have a mini government right in your own home, a mini temple, and so you learn the rules of how to interact with each other. When you read the pastimes, you're learning not only the rules, but you're learning some of the benefits and the, what would you call, not the non-benefits, the disadvantages of not following the rules because of how different things happen to the characters. So how is it in service to Krishna? If you learn the rules, and the rules are to help us to get, as called, back to Godhead, back into the flow of actions that benefit you and everyone else around you. So you're trying to get into that mood, that mode. So we're learning the responsibilities in our real family life, which are trying to imitate what's happening in the pastimes. How do you give respect to everyone that comes into your life, your mother, your brothers, your enemies? And then we see if we can't get stronger in how we have a surety that we have virtuous principles in our life. So you want to see family responsibilities as a service to Krishna because you are advancing. We are advancing. That we now know this is the principle I should keep. This is the principle I should avoid, or the incorrect thing I should avoid. And this gets us closer because the more we can build within our own life how to get success from our actions, and the more we can transfer that into our community life, into our Krishna conscious organization, the more it can benefit from persons within there that know their responsibilities and are willing to carry them out. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. This question is from a mother of 2 young children, hoping to homeschool them. And could you give me some general guidelines how I can prioritize sadhana, health, fitness, services, outreach, in addition to educating them? Okay, that'll be a whole course. Shri Radha Damodar Ki Jai. So she wants to know, how can she prioritize sadhana, health, fitness, services, outreach, in addition to educating the children? Sadhana includes Mangala Artik, reading scriptures, and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So, you know, to be a parent at any time is a very tremendous service. And especially to be a parent that wants to, you know, raise your children Krishna conscious. That's just heavy, heavy duty. So my first thing to all parents is I always say, pray to Krishna for help. The Lord is the super soul in the heart. And He wants us to be successful because our parenting service is service to Him. It's just like if you have a friend and they come and they say, would you watch my children? I have to go do this errand. So in a similar way, Krishna actually is asking us as His servants to take care of His children. And if we really look at it like that and really kind of be in that mood and meditation, it's very helpful, because that worked for me when I realized how totally helpless I was at taking care of these children in any of the ways physically. But I did homeschool my children for the most part, and it was a serious challenge, like how to cover all the different bases. Like people say, well, you're not letting them watch television, and they won't be equipped to deal with the world, and you know, how they're going to be socialized. And these are really legitimate questions, because there have been instances when people homeschooled and their children grew up and they had to go out into the world, because we don't yet have established Krishna conscious communities where our children can just matriculate, find employment, keep on running with the devotees. Mostly we don't have that. So how do you prepare a child to grow up and be conscious of Krishna and live values, and yet be able to have what it takes to deal with other people who are not conscious of Krishna? So one of the things I did was, on a regular basis, we did read from a very early age from Bhagavatam, from Bhagavad Gita. We had fun doing this. Prabhupada said, let them play. They have a playful nature. I think a lot of times parents want our children to be mini adults, and they are not. They are people, but they have to grow up to that adult state. So they have a desire to play, and we have to use our intelligence how to make the Krishna conscious adventure fun. And so, you know, you play games, you sing songs, you take them out for walks. So what I did was, I always think all of my children learned how to swim. They would go to the YMCA or the rec, and that also was they can interact a little bit with other children under supervision. And some of the children ended up being certified lifeguards, because they went through all the different steps of swimming until they got to the lifeguard stage. In the summers, we would do the art museum classes, art classes. We went to the parks and did a lot of that kind of thing. So a lot of nature stuff. And, you know, there's a verse in the Bible that says we have to be wise as the serpent, but harmless as the dove. So to be a parent today, you have to have that kind of wisdom, like you are coming, especially if your children are interacting with other people and not devotees, they're having these influences. So how do you balance that? So once in a while, you may have to watch a television show that's educational, kind of fun with your children, and ask them questions. Try to get the Krishna perspective out of that. And as far as, let's see, we did the health, health and fitness, the swimming classes, or some sport that's not so demanding all the time, like services. One of the things that I learned from my mother is that at early ages, we have to teach our children how to serve us and others, how to respect elders. Like coming from my family tradition, it was a heavy thing of respect. Like you couldn't disrespect your aunt or your uncle, even if they were practically the same age, just for the fact that they were your mother's brother and sister, you had to respect them. And so it was something that was inculcated in us from a very young age, and I tried to do the same with my children, and I find that to be very helpful. One of the things that Prabhupada said when he first came here was that he saw that there was a lack of respect for elders. And sometimes, even in our devotional communities, I see this, and it is not healthy. It's not like beat the child down, but it's just the way you train them up, that this person is equal to their mother or their father, and there's a certain way that you could talk to them. You may laugh and joke with them, but to a certain extent, not like with friends. This is an important value because if children have proper respect for their elders, then those elders are more likely to act as mothers and fathers for them. And we need the whole community to help us raise our children. It takes a village. So I hope that was helpful. You do that.
Everyone devotees. Okay, let's see. Yeah, okay, we got this. So the question, I thought I would take this one first because it's kind of a little funny. How do we talk about the controversial past of ISKCON? Is it important to be open, honest, and ready to learn from the mistakes? And there's a second part to this question. So I'll talk with the first one a little bit first. I thought this question might be appropriate for His Grace Rabindra Shri Prabhu. However, somehow I got this question. If most of you heard him speak the last couple of days, and he did share quite a bit about making mistakes and what to do about that and how we could actually look at that. What's the proper way to look at this? So the first part of the question, controversial part of ISKCON. From a devotee care perspective, there are perhaps, maybe not all of you, but some of you, I'm guessing, are a part and have been a part of that controversial past of ISKCON that we talk about. ISKCON is actually us. We're the ones that make up ISKCON. So if there is a past, don't think that we're not included in that. We may not have directly been a part of whatever we think might have been controversial. However, we are a part of this institution. Is it healthy to talk about some of the things that may have caused some concern for all of us? Yes, of course. Should we think about those things in ways that can be a detriment to our spiritual life? No. Why? Because we are in the material world. We are actually living in a controversial material world. And we ourselves, in many ways, are very controversial, being such conditioned souls. So we bring so much of that with us in the institution. So therefore, it's very important, which we say in the Devotee Care Committee, that we examine, explore, and understand ourselves so that we don't make this a controversial future, because this is not pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. So for the person that asked this question, it's really nice that we look within ourselves and see what might be controversial within me that I might need to address. And how can what do I need to, in order to address that? So is it important to be open, honest, and ready? Yes, to learn from our mistakes. That is the only way to learn. We must be honest. We must be open. However, as Krishnandini is sharing, there is a way to do that. We do that in a way that is respectful, as she shared. So respect means, in order for us to be honest, to be open, we do have guidance. And it's really important that we inquire very respectfully, submissively, as Srila Prabhupada has taught us in the Bhagavad Gita, from those that are examples to help us to understand how to be open and honest. How do we do that? It's not a question of whether or not to do that. We must do that in order to clarify those controversial things within ourselves. However, there is a way for us to do that. And for that, we do need guidance. So this is a really important question for whoever wrote this question. Thank you. The other part of this question is brahmachari ashram a petal of ISKCON's lotus? Very much, from my understanding, not just the brahmacharis, but the brahmacharinis, this has been a topic that we have discussed extensively for years in our devotee care committee, especially as it relates to the brahmacharinis, because there have been some questions, as Prabhupada, when he gave us the varnas, somehow we weren't so much aware, or for whatever the reasons were, we did not place as much emphasis on understanding the brahmacharinis. The brahmacharis, definitely, because the brahmacharis are the ones that have, in the past, in our history, they were the ones that were distributing the books mostly. They were the ones that were being trained personally by Srila Prabhupada to become the illustrious, many of them, sannyasis that we do have in our movement right now. So the petal of education is very important for both ashrams, for the brahmacharis and for the brahmacharinis. This year in Mayapur at the ILS Sangha, we had for the first time a brahmacharini session, which went on for 5 or 6 days, for every day, 2 times in a day. It was amazing. And why was that? Because the brahmacharinis and the brahmacharis, they also do need guidance. Believe it or not, everyone needs guidance. And they need to understand what their needs are in the institution. What are your needs as a brahmacharya? Other than the fact that you are being trained to be a representative of Srila Prabhupada. And what does that mean? What does that entail? What does that entail for you emotionally? What does it entail for you physically? What does that entail for you in terms of understanding the sastra, which we know that the brahmacharis, this is where you spend most of your time studying. However, for all of the ashrams, whether it's brahmacharini, brahmacharya, whether it's the grahastas, whether it's the vanaprasthas, it's, again, what's important, and I can't really express this enough, is that we all understand the importance of guidance at this time. Ultimately, this guidance is coming from Srila Prabhupada, but we still have opportunities to learn from those that have learned from Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.
Nice. Okay. This is a question to me. In one of the slides, there was a quote from Srila Prabhupada, which said, "To draw out spontaneous, loving spirit of sacrificing some energy for Krishna is the art of management." Now, I've attended classes that Vaisheshika Prabhu, this is one of his favorite letters and favorite instructions, so he says it 3 times. I'll just repeat it one more time because it's so nice. To draw out spontaneous, loving spirit of sacrificing some energy for Krishna is the art of management. So now the question. Can you please explain this further so that I can act in service of my spiritual authorities and Krishna with full love and dedication, and believing this will help me to act more intelligently and carefully? Well, the author of this is speaking in a humble voice, because the question is, how do I address myself to those who are in a superior to me, spiritual authority position to me, where I'm demonstrating to them my voluntary spirit of offering some energy to Krishna. Whereas the text from Prabhupada is speaking to a manager, how to relate to those who you're accountable to or responsible for, and how to draw from them some loving spirit of offering some energy to Krishna voluntarily. That's nice reciprocation perspective on the question. When I first read this, my thoughts went to Burijan, who wrote a book called The Art of Teaching, and I took his course in Vrindavan at the VIHE on the art of teaching just after he wrote the book. And he was sharing with us, the audience in the class, that he was interviewing a number of well-known educators, you know, their reputation is that they're excellent educators. So he was interviewing them, you know, what's the art of teaching? And he repeated that at least one of them, maybe it was more than one, said, you know, this is ridiculous. You can't write a book on the art of teaching because it's an art. It's not, you know, paint by numbers, it's art. So you can't teach or write a book about the art of teaching. But he disagreed with the gentleman because there are principles involved in teaching. And one of the principles, I don't recall what he said after that, but I'll share from my own little frame of reference. A lot of the art of teaching or drawing from others spontaneous, loving spirit of sacrificing some energy for Krishna depends upon the person who is trying to do that establishing a relationship of trust, affection, and care. When somebody feels trusted and affection and care, they're much more likely to offer some voluntary loving service to Krishna. So the manager is the intermediary or representative of Krishna, something like Rajalila was saying, you know, there's our founder Acharya and then those that are representing our founder Acharya. And that being representative of the founder Acharya, that's a big service. That's an awesome responsibility, just like parenting is an awesome responsibility. So there has to be genuine qualification as well as care. There's caring that's attached kind of caring, and your ego gets in the way. You can't even see straight. You can't even see what's the best interest of the individual, how to invoke voluntary, spontaneous, loving service, because you're stifling the person. But so, when there's genuine trust in the individual, and that's my short message. The way to extend that kind of trust starts with being trustworthy. It's, you know, same your message of integrity. How can you, if you're not a person of integrity, you're not trustworthy, you're not going to be able to do this. You can certainly try to manage, but it's not going to be engendering this spontaneous, loving service of offering some energy to Krishna. You get obedience, maybe. And then as soon as the cop is gone, then there's disobedience. So even in Prabhupada's Amsats, when someone has, anyway, then it's individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. And Prabhupada had the art, and those that are, exactly as Ravindra Swarup Prabhu said, those that are interested in being disciples, then they have that capacity. They're instruments of that person who they're the disciple of. Now the question is asked from the side of the disciple or the follower or the person who is wishing to offer some spontaneous, loving spirit of sacrificing some energy for Krishna. How do I properly regard those who are trying to draw that from me? Trust, and starts with ourselves being trustworthy. And it's just perfectly natural that the student, just like in a classroom, an example that Prabhupada has given, a teacher is interested in teaching. So they're giving to all the students, regardless of the responsiveness of the students. That's their care. Then amongst all the students, one student is particularly eager to learn. They're particularly going out of their way to hear more on something, and a relationship establishes. A relationship of, it's just like with Narada Muni describing in his previous life. He had those qualities that just drew from the Bhakti Vedanta's special downpouring of affection. It's just natural. So they gave him everything, and he received everything because his heart was open. And he achieved perfection from a nobody to a perfect person in one lifetime. Very wonderful. And prior to that, in the 7th canto Bhagavatam, he describes he was a fallen Gandharva. He was just proud of his beauty and his singing ability, and using that to woo the ladies in the heavenly planetary region, and it was so noticeable. He was cursed. You take birth as a Sudra. So he took birth as a Sudra. Not a good beginning. But that quality of being eager to hear and simplicity of heart, same points, saralata and humility. That's how.
When I have less amount of official work, then I can be able to spend more time in sadhana, hearing and reading more, and remembering Krishna more, and meditate on the qualities of Krishna's and his devotees. But if I have a situation at work, then I won't be able to remember Krishna as much as when I don't have much work at the office. Now the next sentence is underscored. How to remember Krishna more at all times, irrespective of work situation. I haven't worked in an office since I've been a devotee. So in some ways, I'm not an experienced person in this particular thing. But the first thing I can answer is that, of course, your work may not be directly Krishna conscious service, but it should be service that's in support of Krishna consciousness. So if you have a family to support, you have to keep yourself alive. After all, your body belongs to Krishna. You have to take care of it. How much sense gratification are we allowed? Enough to be healthy. That's what we need. I assume that maybe we need a little mental health too, but anyway. Because just to drink a glass of water is sense gratification, so we use everything for Krishna's service. So if I'm earning money in something completely unrelated, but I'm using the fruits of the work in Krishna's service, then that's the equivalent of remembering Krishna directly. Now, to remember Krishna directly in a work situation, there's different tricks one can use. One thing is that you can have verses memorized of the Bhagavad Gita that you could, while you're on hold or something like that, repeat to yourself. There's a lot of times, in a work situation where there's down moments, where there's nothing, a demand, we should make Krishna consciousness the default setting of our minds, so that when we're not otherwise occupied, that's where it goes. That requires the habits. You have to need, a lot of devotional service is requiring habits. If you have the habits of sense gratification, then it's really, really hard, because you have those habits. When you get the habits of Krishna consciousness, then your mind is your friend. When you have the habits of sense gratification, your mind is your enemy, because that's your mind. It's got habits. So part of our effort is to train the mind to get the habits of Krishna consciousness. If you have those habits, then that will be the default setting of your mind when other things have to occupy you. Now, Prabhupada's example, Prabhupada had 6 children. That's a lot. That's a high demand. And his marriage was arranged because he had very, very good financial prospects. When he decided he was going to get involved in Krishna consciousness, he gave up those big prospects, which made his home life hard, because then his wife and his wife's family all hated him, because he broke the deal. It's an Indian marriage, so it's a deal. And he was supposed to have such an income and so much prestige for the family, and he gave it up. He still had a family. He stayed at work. But he tried to arrange things so that the work took the least amount of his time. He just minimized it. He wasn't materially ambitious. Prabhupada said that when he was working, he would chant his rounds 4, 4, 4, 4. He didn't have time to do 16 in a row, but there was time. Of course, in India you had big lunch breaks, not the 20 minutes you get nowadays or whatever. You have to eat standing up like a horse, but I see them, in New York. Anyway. But that's what he did. He made a schedule where he could get his sadhana done according to the schedule. And if one is sincere in doing this, Krishna will show you the ways and make the facility there that you can carry on your Krishna consciousness. So the main thing is to convince Krishna that you're really serious about Krishna consciousness. There are times when you're at work when you really have to pay attention to what's going on. If the service is for Krishna, it's not a problem. There would be no, like for example, as a temple president, sometimes, we need a new furnace for the temple. And then you have to pay attention, because there's 3 different choices for furnaces and furnace installers, and you can't just be chanting Hare Krishna. You have to pay attention to the details of the work. But since it's for Krishna, it doesn't entangle you. You're not creating any karma for yourself. And so that's also Krishna conscious. You have to pay attention. So, irrespective of the work situation, all I can say is try to organize your life so that whatever you do, it's for Krishna directly or indirectly, but it's for Krishna. And pray to Krishna to show you the way. Because more than we want to become Krishna conscious, Krishna wants us to become Krishna conscious. So if we're willing to do what he shows us, he'll show us what to do. Those are my suggestions. Okay.
What is the difference between following and imitating, or imitation? So I want to use for my example one of my examples is Bhakti Marg Swami. Is the walking guru, is that his name?
Walking monk.
The walking monk. Walking guru. So, following, you can go right along the trail that he laid out for us, or to be imitated, or to be followed, and you can make the stops that he made to be imitated or followed, and you can reach the goal that he reached, and for the purpose. So I want to add in on imitation and ask you, would you prefer imitation ice cream to real ice cream? So to give you a little idea that an imitation is not the real thing. So how do I follow the walking monk? Or how do I imitate him? To imitate him, I could put on my orange, and I can get exact number of bottles of water.
Special shoes.
It's
Special shoes.
Walking shoes.
special walking shoes. And your, I wouldn't call them entourage, but just your helpers, your supporters.
Support team.
Your support team. So if I, oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So you could do things exactly like the other person to imitate, but to follow would be a little bit different in that, what is the reason, what is the purpose? Can I be my own unique self in following the principles and the road that's laid out for me? So sometime in imitation, ego is a lot of times in imitation, when you want to be so much like another person that you never realize your own self. If we needed every one of us to be Bhakti Marg, then we'd come out looking and having the same experience, etc. But if Bhakti Marg is one of the leaders that are trying to march for a reason and a purpose, and for us to understand that reason and purpose, and whether we do another march somewhere else for the same reason or purpose, as long as we have that reason and purpose within us, then we are following Bhakti Marg and wanting to have the world be more God conscious. Specialty would be God, Krishna conscious. So what am I doing to follow a trail or a path to let the world know that there's another way of thinking out here? So Bhakti Marg chose to be the walking monk. What do we choose? If we want to imitate him, we may lose the purpose of the march. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. My question is, unity in diversity. How can our movement and the overall spiritual view of Krishna consciousness learn, give and take from other faiths of our world, given that each has their own claims to being the absolute, including the Krishna consciousness movement? So that's the first part of that question. So how can we learn from other faiths, is what he's saying. I think, first of all, to appreciate and understand that when Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he envisioned that one day people from all religions would join together and chant the holy name of the Lord. So here we have one of our predecessor acharyas who's already given a vision, and we know that his vision is true. So when we, with maturity, make an endeavor to appreciate other religions and not be sectarian, to know that Krishna is in the heart of everyone, and different religions have different ways of expressing that. How can we find what's common among ourselves with other religions? How can we find the similarities and yet let that be a point of unity and a point of growth for us? And one way that Tariq and I did it, years ago, we became a part of this interreligious group that was dedicated to strengthening families in Cleveland, Ohio. We had rabbis and ministers and imams and Catholic priests, all a part of this group. And when we were asked to be a part of that group, you know, we actually didn't hesitate because it was kind of aligning with our mission and purpose. And together we actually accomplished very, very good things in the city. Like we got a lot of ministers in the city to make a commitment that they wouldn't marry people, about 400 ministers in the greater Cleveland area, to sign a vow that they wouldn't marry people without premarital education. And for many of the people in the group, they said that that was the first time they had ever come in contact with a Hare Krishna. And the first time they had said Hare Krishna, because that was my thing. I would always say Hare Krishna. People would ask, so that was the introduction. And today, many of us are still fast friends, and they come and support things that we do in our Hare Krishna movement, and we go and support things they do in their churches and ashrams. And it actually has built a kind of really nice fellowship. So I think one thing sometimes any neophyte does in religion is always have this sense of I'm better than you, or my thing is better than yours. And for us, you know, there but for the grace of God go I. We could be in any kind of illusion or situation except for the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And that mercy was so extensive and so huge that it reached out to everyone. And Prabhupada never wanted us to be sectarian. He always wanted us to be really Krishna conscious and invite and encourage others to be whatever religion they were, but be the best of that. And the one, you know, most of you all know that my husband is Muslim, and a lot of people are pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised about that. But, you know, it has caused, you know, many a head to turn in a way, like, because Muslims and Hindus are fighting each other. But here, by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, not only do we get along, but we help others to get along. So in that way, it's of value. And then the last point is, will there ever be true unity if ISKCON is a separate entity?
Say it again?
Will there ever be true unity if ISKCON is a separate entity?
True unity.
True unity. Mm-hmm. I don't exactly know what they mean by that.
I don't either.
So I would say let's all pray over that
Is
one.
that your question?
Well, true unity is unity and diversity.
Yeah.
There's no problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like Prabhu is saying that if we're speaking of unity and diversity, which is what our Prabhupada advocated, suggested, recommended, then that was separate entity. I don't exactly know what you mean.
Who wrote the question would like to clarify the question?
Oh, Prabhu, okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
I was actually referring to the first part of the question as well, as in ISKCON as an organization by itself, but I think you also answered it with your first explanation. So
Okay.
yeah,
Very good.
thank you.
Thank you very much then. Hare Krishna. You
I'd
did
like to
two
add
things.
something.
Yes.
Two somethings. Something that's a principle and something else that's anecdotal. Principle is something that, in an earlier point this morning, we can reach out to others, get out of our comfort zone, and be with other people that are different than us and have different, at least, practice than us and ways than us. to the degree that we're clear who we are. We don't have to give up our identity to be and become chameleon-like and, you know, abandon ourselves and be accommodating to the point where, you know, we're porous and we've lost our identity. Those that are mature, on the other hand, can do that very gracefully and very warmly and very invitingly. So it's just a comment on. Then another, just some anecdotal. Madhavananda Prabhu, who is the director of the Bhaktivedanta Hospital, made a presentation at our GBC meeting that he has taken the lead position amongst organizations that are not Gaudiya Vaishnava, you know, the four Sampradaya groups, leaders from those groups, to come together once a year and do something that we share. And the first something is the chanting of the holy name. It's exactly what Bhaktivinoda Thakur said. And then the next is something to do with celebrating. No, wait a minute. This year is ISKCON 50. Next year is the holy name. The year after that is Ramanujacharya's appearance, the something or other anniversary. 1000th year anniversary of Ramanujacharya. Sampradaya is coming together and glorifying Ramanujacharya on the 1000th year of his anniversary. It's just, you know, points of unity amongst those that are very clear about who they are, diversity-wise, but points of unity as one example. Charu is a fantastic example of another person who understands this principle. He wouldn't be able to survive if he didn't. Of course, the medium where he is, they're really clear about their identity, and they're therefore comfortable in helping him financially and otherwise do the Hare Krishna thing right in Mormon country, as another anecdotal example.
They gave him $25,000.
Ah, yeah. They helped him build the temple that he has and helping him build the next one. And just another, in our audience here is a devotee at Brandeis University that conducted a program that I was the invited guest. What would you call that thing? Huh? Sound yoga. So she sent a sound yoga invite to the religious groups. And when I walked in, it was really interesting. There was a fellow with his yarmulke. There was some Japanese girls with their, you know, that are Buddhist. And there was a, you know, the range of all the different, a number of different organizations. And we went around the room and, you know, what are you from, and this and that and the other thing. And it was very interesting. And when it came to chanting Hare Krishna, they all enthusiastically chanted Hare Krishna. It was a point of convergence, although it didn't mean our intention is for them to give up being, you know, a Hasidic Jew or a Buddhist or some ladies with the covering over the head that are Islamic. It wasn't like, you know, take that thing off your head and become a Hare Krishna. But it was nice. It was nice. It was inspiration, and I thought it was really nice.
One more thing to add, Maharaj, is in Cleveland we have the Namahata program, and one thing we did for 12 years, we had a Lord Have Mercy festival in this big park, and we invited people from all religions, and we had Jews and Mormons and Baha'is and Baptists, and that we had a stage, and we asked everyone to come and praise God in whatever way they wanted, poetry, dance, or music. But then the highlight was a huge kirtan that we'd have. Bhakti Tirtha Swami came to some, Radhanath Maharaj. It was huge. It was in the newspaper. But the beautiful thing was that there were all these different religions, each sharing, and everybody was so pleasantly engaged together. And we called it the Lord Have Mercy Festival. We served hundreds of plates of prasadam and that kind of thing. So it turned out to be a good example of unity and diversity like that.
Haribol, so this question is, how do I know which spiritual master to take shelter of? There are
That
so
one. I've
there-
heard that one before.
there are so many variables to consider. Sometimes I think it would make things more clear for a spiritual master to choose me. Trying to understand who can be confusing. It can be confusing. So I absolutely, totally empathize with whoever wrote this question, because I've walked in your shoe, and I know many people that have walked in the same shoe. So yes, it's kind of daunting because the followers of Srila Prabhupada, they all have so many amazing, wonderful qualities. And they are so dedicated to Srila Prabhupada's mission. And in addition to all of that, not only are they dedicated, they have made so many things possible that for some of us that have come a little later to be able to participate in Prabhupada's ISKCON. And they also have their different styles and their personalities of who they may be. So one thing that's really nice in ISKCON at this time is no worries. The person that wrote this question, please don't be confused, because you can simply take shelter of Srila Prabhupada until there's a saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so you don't have to worry that teacher is right there coming, and you're in preparation. However, in that preparation, Srila Prabhupada is guiding us all, ultimately. So we read Srila Prabhupada's books. Most importantly, we try to live Srila Prabhupada's books. And as we start living Srila Prabhupada's books, a teacher will come to guide us in how to exemplify that for ourselves and for others. And that's what's important. So no worries. Don't be too confused. Srila Prabhupada is there for all of us. Thank you.
If we get that far. We have 10 minutes. We may get 3 more questions. Let's see. Yesterday, this is addressed to me. At the breakout session, education breakout session, we were discussing about how it is important to establish authority and accountability while homeschooling or teaching children in general. I'd like to know, how do we strike a balance between being authoritative and at the same time give enough choices to kids for them to choose, basically making them independently thoughtful? Well, that's the art of parenting. And, you know, I'm not a parent, but I teach, and I do interact with people of different ages, including children. My sense is it's a very similar answer as how I responded before. That is, be trustworthy and understand, very similar to what Krishna Nandini said, children like to play, and give the freedom to play where it's, you know, it's not in violation of some principle, but then at the same time guiding choices. When you see a child, just like, you know, when we end at 1 o'clock, we're going to have Balaram lead kirtan for a bit. So here's a little boy that he taught himself to play harmonium and learn different melodies and chant Hare Krishna. He just, I don't know, sat in front of a video of Bayasaki or Bhattahari or however he did it, and he can sing as long as you let him go. And, you know, spaces out a little bit, but, you know, he stays pretty focused and chants. So when you see a child has a propensity, then as a parent you nourish the propensity, especially propensities that are wholesome. And if there are propensities that are not so wholesome, then rather than this word authoritative, I much prefer guide the child to do something different, and in many cases, this is my preference in any case, is explain why we don't do this, and ask them back, do you understand, not just mommy or daddy said don't do this, and you don't do this because mommy and daddy said so, that's why, but explain why mommy and daddy said so. And this is one of the values that we hold, and this is why we hold this value, and we don't go over there because it leads to some other undesirable thing. So that the why question is addressed if there's something that's unwholesome, and largely encourage wholesome responses, and reward it, and support it, and grow it, and do those wholesome things together. That makes the affection between the parent and the child wonderful. So they want the affection as much as they want the wholesome thing, and just growing good quality. So the authoritative part is when it gets to the point of socially improper or harming themselves or harming others, a value that's going to lead. Like Mother Jasoda, Krishna stealing. She said, I don't mind you broke the butter pot, because Nanda Maharaj has so much butter. But stealing, I have to check that. Specifically in the Bhagavatam. So when there's crossing the line of something that's principle-based, then some incrementally increased if necessary, but some draw the line with an explanation of why. And if the why isn't understood, or sometimes children are stubborn and they're adamant they're going to do it if you say no, then the discipline must notch up a little bit. Those are my thoughts on that one. We have 6 minutes.
This question is for the seminar on Anartha Nivritti. While fenceless chanting and ridding oneself of anarthas, it seems like there is room for tendency to focus too much on this, or in other words, become self-absorbed. Could you please elaborate on this, or how to recognize if we are doing so, and what remedial steps we could take? Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Good question.
Yeah, I've been through this myself.
Voice of experience.
We know the stages of advancement. If you read Madhurya Kandamani, each stage, Nishta, Anartha Nivritti, Nishta, they're described, their symptoms. We want to make advancement, and we may be anxiously looking, am I here? Am I this far in this stage, or am I in that stage? And you may be thinking more about yourself and less about Krishna. Well, it came home to me when I discovered at one time that in a sort of spontaneous way, I had some feelings of humility, just causeless almost, and I became puffed up about my humility. I was proud of being humble. So back to the drawing board. So you have to watch your mind. But at the same time, to me, the remedy for this problem is that we are not the architects of our advancement. We are not saving ourselves. Krishna is saving us. And if we make any advancement, it has become Krishna's mercy. And if we can do anything is just get the junk out of the way and the false ego out of the way. And if my false ego won't get out of the way, then I can only pray to Krishna, you come and destroy it. It's bigger than me. Please destroy it. So that seems...
And then when he destroys it, don't protest.
And then when he destroys it, yeah, wow, I didn't know that was going to mean that. Humility is just realism. And we should become realistic. And on the basis of humility, you'll find if you read the Shashastrika prayers in the last chapter of the Prabhupada's translation of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he tells what Lord Chaitanya is saying, thinking, feeling for each. So dainya comes, humility comes, and then it's every time he recites the next verse, dainya is there. It gets more and more and more and more. And then, you know, the humility of Srimati Radharani is almost really... So our path is the path of humility, and it's only realism. And as humility increases, feelings for Krishna increases. And we start to love humility for its own sake. And that's why people even seek it out more and more and more. And why, you know, all traces of pride start to disappear. And just like love of God has no upper limit, humility, you can, however humble you are, you can always get more humble.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah.
What is the difference between religion and spirituality? What is the difference between religion and spirituality? Religion is a word that's is speaking of to realign yourself up with an original source. Meaning to do over again, to do something or go back to where you started from. We start out from the baby stage, and we really more natural then than any other time in our life. We take on this, take on that, and oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. So we want to stay in a state that is designed for us to be in, to be advancing human beings, working well with one another. So spirituality is a word that seems to, the way I see it used today, is to become a substitute for religion. Because religion, in the minds of those who promote it real strong, this is just my observation, is that religion has failed the people. Well, maybe the people have failed the understanding of what religion is. And not so much, you know, because if religion is natural, the natural state, how can being natural fail? So you want, the Sankofa bird is a bird that, you see it more in Africa, it's a bird that's face, the body is going forward and the head is looking back. So you have a word called, what's it called when you repent. You look back and see from which you came and say, maybe I need to change my direction. And so you kind of shift to realign yourself up with your original source. So spirituality is like trying to say, I can be spiritual without realigning myself up with the original source. So spirituality is really supposed to direct you to religion. But the way it's being used is as a substitute for religion.
You know, there's a poll, let me just add something. There is actually a poll most Americans consider themselves spiritual but not religious. That's like the standard thing.
In the Vedas, it explains that Krishna says, Dharma Tisaksat Bhagavat Pranitam, that I am the source of our religion, and that real religion means the laws given by God. But because we've messed up and we've associated religion with rituals and external practices, people have distanced themselves from that. I don't want that, because so-called religious people, they're mean, they're rigid, they're not kind. So let us be spiritual, which means somehow that we understand that all things are united and connected. But what our Prabhupada did was to really help us appreciate what is religion. It means to follow the laws of God who gives real religion. And just because someone has perverted religion doesn't mean that we need to reject it. So I think that the real marriage of spirituality and religion is Krishna consciousness.
And when you're following the laws of God, you actually could go and take an ethics class, and it's the same thing. You know, be truthful, your word is your bond. So even ethics, you know, people say we should study ethics, but it's all also religion. It's all also spirituality, and it's also connecting up with God and the purpose that He has for us, to how we can have a better earth situation, living situation between each other. So we have to practice these ethical principles that we're learning in either religion or in spirituality. Thank you.
Okay, it's time for the final kirtan. And our virtuoso, Balaram, is going to lead us. We just need one mridanga player, because he plays harmonium. He can't do. Oh, you're going to be the mridanga player? All right.
Thank you for all that you shared with us this week.